Nawe pibora
webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki.
Nawe pibora
webaki nyuma sitwaenda na haki. Power!
Comrades power!
Power!
Comrades power!
Power!
I hope you are aware that on 30th of April this year, the High Court declared the PBO Regulatory Authority as unconstitutional. The High Court also declared that the requirement for NGOs who want to become PBOs to re-register is unconstitutional. The High Court also found out that the requirement in the PBO Act that all PBOs must be members of the Federation was also declared unconstitutional. The High Court also declared that the requirement that those PBOs who want to register self-regulatory forum to have a significant number as unconstitutional. And of course, one of the main judgments that the High Court issued was that the High Court declared the PBO authority as unconstitutional. The PBO authority subsequently went to court and obtained a stay order that elapsed on 8th of August this month. So that literally meant that all the declarations of the court were in force. However, the authority went to Court of Appeal on 4th of August and filed seeking to extend the stay order. But the High Court or the courts found out that it was not possible to issue that judgment ex parte, and therefore last Friday we were in court, and the regulatory authority argued that the order of the court that declared them unconstitutional will render the authority unable to perform its function. So after a long day of arguments, the courts declared the following: that all the orders that were issued by the High Court on 30th of April are in force. And some of the orders are that the declaration of the whole 5th schedule of the Act as unconstitutional, that one is still in force. The High Court also issued an order declaring that the requirement for re-registration of NGOs who want to become PBOs as unconstitutional. So this means that all NGOs are now PBOs. So nobody should be asked to register afresh, because the courts have said that requirement for the NGOs who want to become PBOs to register afresh as unconstitutional. The court also found that the tribunal, that is section 50, that the tribunal of the PBO, the whole section 50 was found as unconstitutional. For example, the appointment of the tribunal members by the Chief Justice. The court found out that the tribunal is a quasi-judicial body, and therefore members of the tribunal should be people who are qualified as judges. And the fact that the tribunal will be listening to disputes, then the court found out that the tribunal should be appointed by the Judicial Service Commission. Of course, also the removal of the tribunal members by the CJ, the courts found that that one should be done by the Judicial Service Commission. And of course, the salaries of the tribunal, the Act states that the tribunal salaries is determined by the board. The courts found out that if the board is the one to determine the salaries of the if the authority is the one to determine the salary of tribunal, then it is illegal, because all salaries have to be decided by the SRC, or the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. And of course, the court also found out that the requirement that all PBOs to be members of federation as unconstitutional. So as things stand now, no PBO is mandated or forced to become a member of the federation. It has said that membership of the federation is voluntary, because if you force anybody to be a member of an association, then it goes against the constitution, which states that I have a right to choose where I belong. However, the order that declared the authority as unconstitutional, that is number 4, which stated that the authority is unconstitutional, that one has been suspended, because the order that was declared on 30th stated that the PBO authority as unconstitutional, and so is all the sections in the 5th schedule and section 35 that form the authority. But while in court, the authority argued that should that stand, then there will be a paralysis, because there are some administrative functions, like for example payment of staff and some other issues like budgeting, etc. So after hearing, that particular section of the judgment was suspended until full determination of the matter that has been filed by the regulatory authority in the Court of Appeal. So that simply means that the authority will perform any other function apart from all the functions that require suspension, cancellation, and of PBOs, because the courts found out that the PBO Act now states that the authority can suspend the certificate or cancel the certificate of a PBO, but the board does not provide means of appeal or where the PBOs can be heard. So the courts found out that those functions, those quasi-judicial functions, like suspension, deregistration, cancellation of certificates, is a function that is quasi-judicial and therefore cannot be performed by a body like the authority. So this means that the authority can today consider registrations, because if you want to register as a PBO, you can consider those, you can be considered by the PBO authority, but they cannot suspend, cancel any PBO simply because they have not re-registered. So in short, the PBOs out there should continue performing their function without fear, because the courts have already said as much, that the only functions that the board or the authority is allowed to perform are administrative functions that are necessary to make the authority alive. So we are telling the authority, the board and the authority and the federation, that we are watching you. And you remember that sometimes back we told the authority to follow the act. Now that the courts have talked, we are telling the authority, like for example, constituting an all stakeholders forum. You know, the authority has been meeting some NGOs or some CSO leaders, about 5 to 10, and then they purport that they have met all the CSOs. We are telling the board that CSOs in Kenya is not monolithic. It is diverse. You can only meet 5 people and claim that you have met the CSOs. We want the authority to immediately convene an all stakeholders forum of all CSOs, PBOs, NGOs, and even those groups that want to become PBOs, so that we can agree on how we can steer the transition process. And 2, we're asking the authority that, for example, constitution of a 15-man steering committee to advise the government and the PBOs on working together should be constituted. We are still telling the government that our demand that the implementation of PBO should be removed from security, interior, to devolution still stands. And the courts have allowed us that we can still go back there if we see the authority deviating from what they have been told to do. So our intention is not to cause a paralysis, and that's why with our advocates, we agreed with the courts that the order number 4 be suspended. But the courts also told the authority that they have to expedite the matter in the Court of Appeal. So should we, as CSRG, feel that the board is delaying deliberately so that they can continue, then we shall not hesitate to go back to court and seek for redress.
The argument from the PBO Regulatory Authority was that if it remains unconstitutional, if the ruling remains that they are unconstitutional, then they will be incapacitated. And because, as my fellow comrade said, we are not up to paralyzing the process or paralyzing the sector, we agreed that let them have that leeway, But they should now follow up by implementing the act the way it's supposed to be implemented, by ensuring that they call all stakeholders, all the people who are considered as PBOs, all those that do public benefit, not discriminatory way of doing things, so that we have that holistic approach. Let everybody, even those who want to, because the act qualifies some organizations that do some public benefit work, they can apply for the status of a PBO. So the authority should not limit itself to a certain number of people. They should open the door. They should make the announcement that anybody who is maybe like it's a society, an association, an organization, but it wants to do a public benefit activity, they should invite others. That's what we call an all stakeholders meeting. So they should not focus on a particular section of a group. We are expecting them to follow what the PBO Act says, that they constitute an all stakeholders meeting to chart the way forward, so that we have a smooth flow of transition in the sector.
Kwa majina naitwa Elizabeth Kamene, mimi ninatoka katika kikundi cha CSRG. Public participation ni ya kila mmoja wetu, na kila mwananchi anafai kukua katika hizo vikao ndio tuweze kupitisha mijadala zenye zinastahili. Na pia kwa upande wa CIDP, most of the counties hawajapublish kwa websites zao. Unapata kuwa kama Kisumu lazima ukue na uhusiano ama ukue na nini nzuri na either kama MCA ama nini ndio uweze kupata huo ujumbe kwa haraka, of which counties website ni za nini, kwa sababu county website ni kama for example kuna tikitu unafai kupata katika hizi counties, inafai kuwekwa kwa website. Website inamaanisha kila mtu anaweza kuwa kuna urahisi wa kuipata. Sasa kama uwezi kuweka hapo, unatarajia watu watapata wapi? Na pia sio kila mtu yuko na smartphone si kila mmoja wetu wako nayo, ku access internet itakuwa ngumu. Pia katika zile vikundi mashinani wanafai kuconsider kuwa kuna wanawake, kuna watu walemavu, kuna watu wanafai kuziweka hizi public participation waiseme kwa muda unaofaa, wapeane mahali panapo stahili, mahali pale mtu mwenye anakaa na ulemavu anaweza fikia kwa haraka. Pia inafai include wanawake, inafai include pia vijana, waiseme kwa wakati unaofaa, na pia wasi provide documents kubwa ambazo watu hawezi kuisoma kwa wakati unaofaa. Kitu kingine ni about the PBO Act. Kuna vipande kadhaa ambavyo havifurahishi katika vikundi. Kama for example, uwezi ambia watu waingie katika vikundi ilhali wako na pia au uhuru wa kuchagua au kwenye wanataka au wenyewe kufanya. Na pia uwezi waambia utaanza kuaccess information kuhusu their donors, venye pesa inatumika, venye nini. That is not the constitution that we have. Wanafai kufuata katiba, kwa sababu katiba ndio after Biblia kwa wenye ni Wakristo, katiba ndio inafuata. Katiba ndio sheria enye wananchi wengi wanajua katika Kenya. PBO Act inafai kuimplementiwa kulingana na vipengee za PBO Act 2013. Sio ambazo zenye wanajihusisha au wenyewe ni kama zenye ziko na maana fiche zenye wataki watu wahusike nazo.
Wakati tumeenda kwa ground kuangalia watu kama wanaelewa maana ya public participation ama kwa nini wa participate na mambo, tumegundua ya kwamba watu wengi wanaongea kama hawaelewi ama hawajui. Pia wale wanaitwa MCS pale chini wamekosa kabisa kuweza kuelezea watu wao maana ya public participation, especially kwa CIDP na mambo ya kupanga miradi na mambo ambazo zinawahusu wakaaji wa mahali pale. Unagundua ya kwamba MCA wengine wameambia watu ya kwamba haina maana. Watu wanakuja tu kuongea ili iweze wasikike tu wameongea. Lakini tukiangalia constitution yetu na tuangalie Public Participation Act na tuangalie sheria za Nairobi kama watu wa Nairobi, unapata ya kwamba public participation inapatiwa mahali pakubwa ili watu waweze kujipanga mikakati ya mahali wanaishi na Kenya wanataka ifanyike na vile wanataka ifanyike. Ni muhimu sana civic education iweze kufanyika mashinani, maana mtu hawezi piga Kenya ajui na mtu hawezi ongea Kenya ajui. Kwa hivyo lazima watu waelezwe wakaweza kujua maana ya civic education. Pia tulikuwa invited kwa county level kuweza kuelezea na swali moja lililokuja kutoka kwa mkubwa wa public participation ni Nairobi mzima walikuwa watu 2500 including watoto, na yet Nairobi iko na watu 500,000. Is it logical watu 2500 wanaongea kwa niaba ya watu 500,000? Kwa hivyo tumegundua ya kwamba civic education is number one. Watu hawaelewi maana na hawajui, yet hii ni miradi yao, ni barabara zao, ni hospitali zao, ni shule zao, na mambo zile zinawahusu directly kama wards. Message yangu kwa Pibora, kitu ya kwanza, tunajua court ruling ile imepatianwa ni stay order ya kwamba wanaweza fanya administrative work, but kila kitu ingine imewekwa in place until wasikike court of appeal. Kwa hivyo tunawaomba ya kwamba kitu ya kwanza wajue tunawafuata karibu, na tunataka wafanye na wafuate sheria, kwa sababu hakuna ambaye ako juu ya sheria za Kenya. Kila mtu anastahili kufuata sheria na iwezekanavyo, ili hata watu wale wamekuja na nia nzuri ya kusaidia watu pale mashinani wakaweza kuifanya bila uoga. Kwa hivyo mimi ujumbe wangu ni kwamba pale mashinani vikundi zile zinasaidia watu, zinasomesha watoto, wanachimbia watu maji, wanasaidia mama mboga waweze kufanya kazi bila uoga.
If you look at the president's directive, after a period of 13 years, in his own wisdom and conscience, he had a very clear intention of ensuring that PBO Act is enacted. But I fail to understand what happens in this country that makes it very difficult for those who are embedded to ensure that the Constitution works. They don't implement what ought to be implemented as it's supposed to be. That is the main elephant in the room in this country. And we are asking, we in the civil space, in the civic space, that we want to see a country whereby the Constitution is followed to the letter. It doesn't take any rocket science to follow the Constitution. That is our humble plea.